So, hello and welcome to another one of these, what are supposed to be monthly lives that I've been doing over the last, I don't know, 16, 17 months or something, talking each month to a Ukrainian teacher of English about the way in which Russia's war on Ukraine has impacted them and impacted their teaching. This month we're going to be talking to a teacher called Maryna, who was recommended to me. I should also say that I was in Ukraine myself last weekend. I was in Lviv doing a training course for teachers from all over the country. So it's very fresh for me and very close. One of the teachers I met last week, I just saw that her brothers died this week, fighting. And I guess, as many of you have seen, there was this horrific attack on a block in Odessa, which has killed at least 10 people so far, including 3 kids, 2 babies and a very young child. So, you know, the terror attacks against Ukrainian civilians continue. And because of that, I feel it's important to continue having these conversations. At some point, I'm hoping Maryna will join and ask to be added to the live. I should just have a quick scroll back and see if she's already joined us. 1 second. Sorry, I should have been keeping an eye on that. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us so far. I'll wait a minute and see. If anyone's got any questions or anything in the interim, feel free just to stick questions in the comments. Otherwise, I'll just ramble on a little bit. You're here, Maryna. Hey, hello. So just ask to join the live. Can't talk properly. Sunday afternoon. Ask to join the live, Maryna, and I'll add you. I think you can do it from your end, or maybe I can do it from my end. Let me see. Go live. Okay, let's do it. Well, let's see what happens. I don't know if we cancel each other out.
Yes, I did. I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. Let me just turn my own volume up a little bit so that I can hear you properly. Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Hello.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting. It was so unexpected, but I was so happy to hear from you. And I'm like, wow, you sent me a message.
I thank Daria for this.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, it is a great pleasure and a great opportunity for me to talk and to be heard.
Thank you. And where are you at the moment, Maryna?
I'm in Dnipro. Actually, I was born and raised here. This is my native city, and this is the east part of Ukraine, quite close to the front line. And Dnipro now became a military hub. So yeah, and I'm here. I'm living here. I'm still in Dnipro, and I don't have any plans to leave my city.
Have you stayed in Dnipro the whole time for the whole of the full-scale invasion?
Oh, well, no, I left I was in Bulgaria for 6 months.
Okay.
It's just some, difficult and hard memories. So after a week, I decided to leave, and I spent the next 6 months in Bulgaria. I was renting an apartment in Sunny Beach with my parents and my son. I took my son and my dog, a suitcase, and decided to live. My entire plan was to go to Turkey because my sister-in-law lives there, but I was so exhausted, so stressed, and I decided to be a bit closer to Ukraine. So yeah, I came back in September. It was the time when Ukrainian army had and they had some success with Kharkiv and other cities, and I decided to come back to my husband. It was a difficult choice, really. I mean, my husband was still here in Dnipro, and I just didn't want to live without him anymore, and I decided to come back.
I was thinking about this last weekend when I went to Lviv, and as I was leaving Lviv, I got the 3 o'clock in the morning train out of Lviv, and most of the people on the train were women for obvious reasons. And there were like husbands and fathers kissing people goodbye, and there were women taking their kids off. And I was thinking about all of the kids who were being forced to grow up without their dads near them, and knowing their dads are maybe serving, or knowing their dads are staying in Ukraine, and how hard it is. I mean, it's hard bringing up kids if you've got both parents under normal circumstances, and to then bring up a kid abroad on your own in a country where maybe you don't necessarily speak the language, you don't have the support system. I know it must be incredibly difficult for people who are forced into that situation.
Yeah, I wish nobody would ever face this choice to leave, to save your kid or to stay with the love of your life. I have very close relationship with my husband, and it was so difficult to leave him here. And during the whole period of my staying in Bulgaria, he was here in Dnipro, living alone. Um, yeah, so and I saw how my son missed
Yeah,
him, and he asked a question. He was 4. He didn't really realize what was going on. But still, and again, Bulgaria is a great country. I mean, it's nice. They were so welcoming, but it's not home. And I left here. I left here my some of my friends and family members. We have a grandmother, she's 87, and she can't leave the country. We have 2 cats here, you know. And so yeah, if I could do that again, I wouldn't change anything. I mean, I would come back to Ukraine. I feel that I'm here and I can be
yeah.
helpful, and I'm just do what I can to support uh, my country and my city and well, people who live here.
It's funny because one of my students is from Kharkiv, and she stayed in Kharkiv like for pretty much the last 2 years. And then she was offered a chance to go to Coventry, England, and she's currently in Coventry. And we talk every week when we see each other. And she said, in a strange way, she feels more useless being out of the country than when she was in Kharkiv. Because she said, like, if she's in Kharkiv, even though it was being shelled a lot, they were under attack a lot, she knew that if there was a shelling had happened 10 blocks away, she can just go down to the place, she can try and help people, she can be part of the kind of communal activities to kind of help rescue people, feed people, house people, clothe people. When you're away from that, you're just kind of stuck on telegrams scrolling through, feeling kind of.
I I feel that. In January, I took a week off. I went to Spain with my girlfriends, and it was a week of scrolling my feed on Instagram. And I understood that I don't want to leave the country without my family, and I don't feel peace. I was so anxious every single moment I saw that there is an air raid or something happening in Dnipro. So yeah, like that. When you mentioned Kharkiv, I used to have. So I'm running an online school of English, and when the full invasion started, I think I lost half of my team. We used to have lots of teachers in Kharkiv, Mariupol, Kherson, Berdyansk, because there are some departments and universities, like English language departments. So definitely, I did have some teachers from these cities. They forced to move somewhere. Some of them now are in the United States, others in Canada, and they changed. This changed a lot my
Yeah,
team, and that influenced a lot our teaching as well. So we do communicate, but that's different. They live a different life, and some because of the time difference again and different lifestyles, some of them just quitted teaching. They had to take different jobs,
yeah.
and yeah, that's just one of the consequences I also faced with this full invasion.
It's a very common thing for displaced people. I think I know friends who live in the UK. who are originally from Kosovo or originally from Palestine. And when they were back home, they were kind of like English professors, and they're now here driving buses and working in restaurants and stuff. And it's such a kind of waste of people's talent, but it's also a kind of a sign of how resilient people can be, how flexible humans can be.
Sure. And I understood that I want to live here in Ukraine, not just because nobody actually needs English teachers in Canada and the United States, but still, I just feel right here. I would say I feel that I'm on the right place,
Mm.
and and yeah, one of the goals, for example, for this spring and summer is just to donate more.
Yeah,
And I feel that's it's just something that I want to do, and I have this goal in my plan.
yeah. And how is it in Dnipro at the moment? I mean, is there still a lot of shelling going on? Are you getting lots of air raids?
Sure. Like something regular. I got used to it. Tonight I woke up because of the explosion. I checked with my mobile phone. It was something, some not serious thing. I believe just I checked. My husband checked the phone, and we decided that nothing to worry about. So we kept sleeping. That's the life in Dnipro. I still check the news, definitely not so often as I used to do that in the past. But I keep an eye on everything what's going on. And unfortunately, there is no place to hide. We don't have a bomb shelter nearby. Uh, but now I'm choosing a school, a primary school for my elementary school for my kids, and one of the criteria is to have a bomb shelter there. And it's just something blow my. Like
Yeah,
I check the program, the teachers, and I check if they have the bombshell there.
yeah. I mean, it shouldn't be something you have to think about for your children, but understandably in the context. I mean, when I was in Lviv last week, it was a very weird feeling, kind of every big building you go into. I go into the hotel, there's a sign telling me where the shelter is. In the venue we were doing the talks in, I find out where the shelter is. In the station, I know where the shelter is. It's a very strange feeling for people who haven't been in that situation before.
I was in theater with my son today, and we also we were interrupted because of the air raid, and we were asked if we want to continue the play or leave, and everybody decided to stay because that's what we usually do here in Dnipro. Uh, the worst thing about uh, I'm sorry, it's something with connection. We got used to it. It became normal, and I really didn't want. I, I miss my personality and my life before the full invasion. I will never be a person who doesn't know what the war is. Um, and this experience is just life changing.
Yeah,
Um, uh, Again, when I was in Spain, there were some fireworks, and I understood that it's safe. I knew that there were fireworks because of the football match, but my body and my reactions, uh, I felt the same as I usually feel in Ukraine.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
similar to that.
It's a kind of PTSD, yeah.
I heard about this, but I hope to avoid it.
It's a kind of version of this, I guess. I mean, I remember hearing a radio program once about a guy who was in Iraq, and he said when he came back one day, he was on the beach with his kids, and he saw like these tufts of sand sticking out of the sand dunes, and he kind of just cracked up and started crying and shaking because it reminded him of seeing the heads in the sand in Iraq, in the desert. And he said, he thought he was okay and he thought he'd processed everything, and then suddenly one thing happens, and it sets off a whole series of kind of memories and associations, and you're not always able to control what's going to set that off and what's going to trigger things.
I unfortunately I do know, and I believe that's something here in Ukraine we're going to face quite soon. Um, so yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. So we started to talk about directly about this.
Let's bring it a bit, Maryna, yeah? So can you tell us a bit more about, you said you grew up in Dnipro, yeah?
Yeah, I did. And my family, my parents, both my parents and my grandparents are from Dnipro as well. Um, most of my family members are medical workers, doctors, and nurses. And somehow I became an English teacher and a marketer. I'm developing professionally into these two spheres. So I consider myself Ukrainian, even though my father has some relatives in Russia,
I
but
was
we
going
do
to,
not communicate. Huh?
did you grow up in a Russian-speaking family at home, or?
Yeah, a Russian-speaking family, and I went to a Russian school. It was elementary school, but I think elementary and middle school because we just didn't have any other options. There were no Ukrainian schools in my neighborhood. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so for me now, it sounds ridiculous. I always considered myself a Ukrainian, but I didn't receive basic education in Ukrainian language. Um, then I entered a college, a university, and I started to speak and learn Ukrainian language. Now I speak only Ukrainian. We switched in my family 2 years ago. Uh, First, it was for work, and then I just felt I didn't want to have anything in common with this culture anymore. I stopped buying books in English for my kids, and now I read only Ukrainian authors to support them. And oh my God, it's oh look, Ukrainian cultures and Ukrainian writers are so great. I mean, it felt so different. I used to read lots of Russian authors,
Yeah, yeah,
but when
yeah.
I started to read Ukrainians, it was like, oh, that's mine. Why didn't I do that before?
And
So,
did you find growing up in a Russian-speaking family in a predominantly Russian-speaking part of Ukraine, what was there? Did you feel the influence of like the Russian information space and Russian messaging and Russian propaganda? Was
oh,
that,
I did definitely, but anyway, I knew that I am Ukrainian. My grandfather spoke Ukrainian, and by the way, he called Soviet Union the prison of nations. Both of them, my grandparents, they took part in the Second World War, and I started to notice there's something wrong because of their attitudes. The attitude to the Second World War that was actively promoted on TV, Russian TV, was different comparing to those they both had. We never celebrated the Victory Day on 9th of May. It was a memory day. They didn't want to talk about the Second World War at all. We knew just some facts, no emotions at all. It was a trauma for both of them. And again, both of my grandparents, they survived the man-made famine, the Holodomor. So I know these stories from first hands. And when we watched Russian television and read these books, I think I treated them, you know, just to compare. Let's say I knew what they did to Ukrainians, but it was somewhere in the past. The same, let's say, French or English young people would treat Germans somewhere in 60s and 70s. So we
yeah,
did have some troubles in the past, but we had the same troubles with Poland and Polish people. As we usually repeat, we are friends with Poland because they haven't invaded us this century. Like this
it,
century,
it
really.
helps to get on with people if they haven't invaded you this century.
Yeah.
You know, get on with your neighbours if they haven't invaded you.
Yeah,
Um,
and that was enough. I mean, like that was enough for me. Um, so I think when I was 16, I learned that grandmother, she was Jewish, and once we were visiting her family graves, she pointed and said that, "Did you know that the real name the real name of my grandmother was not Anna, but Isfir. And my grandparents wasn't Boris, he was Benifazi, Benya. I understood that she told that they had to change their names and kept their personalities secret because being a Jewish in Soviet Union was dangerous to your life. I was 16 and I started to, I started to understand, I started to ask questions. That's how I learned about, I think I was at university when I learned about the executed Renaissance and many Ukrainian authors and people who were imprisoned just for speaking Ukrainian language.
Yeah, I mean, out there who are watching don't know about it. I mean, it's worth Googling the executed Renaissance, just seeing how in the 1930s that Ukrainian intellectuals and artists and writers were basically targeted, singled out and killed as part of the way of trying to crush Ukrainian identity. And, you know, a lot of Ukrainians will tell you that there's a kind of similar process going on today with lots of Ukrainian writers already having been killed and, you know, art galleries being looted and museums being targeted and all this kind of thing.
Going back to your questions about consuming Russian content. It did influence us. I mean, definitely when you read the books or watch the same TV shows, usually Russian TV shows as well as movies and TV series are full of propaganda. So, but you share the same stories. I remember when I started to take part in different conferences and studies program abroad, I took part in summer schools in Sweden, Poland, Germany. There were some Russians, and we shared the same stories. You know, we always had something to talk about because, because of the content. And I think it was in Poland in 2008. It was a summer school, and I made friends with a girl from Latvia. We had a discussion. That was the year after Russia invaded Georgia, and she told me something like, I don't remember the words, but it was something like Ukraine would be the next one. I was terrified. I couldn't believe that it actually was possible. Like how, why, and I didn't see any reasons. I had some I had some friends there. Again, I made them in the United States when I went for work and travel program, and I was communicating with them till the full invasion. Some of them even blocked me. Yeah, like that.
So when did English appear in your life, Maryna?
English, okay. I had English classes since I was 5. I mean, like most of Ukrainians. But fully, I started to employ myself into the field, I believe, when I was a college student. I used English to communicate during these summer programs and the academic experiences I had, courses different abroad. But I started to teach occasionally, actually. I got a position of a PR manager. My major, I graduated as from the mass media department.
Okay.
So public relations and mass communication, that's my topic. I got a position of a PR manager in a private school of English, and I was learning the business, the whole business from inside. I learned about Celta and Delta and why teachers, ESL teachers want this certificate so much. So I was invited to conduct a speaking club about working and studying abroad, because definitely that was my topic. It was 2008 or 2009. I loved, and since then, I'm developing professionally in both of these spheres, marketing and English teaching. Since 2012, I've been running a digital marketing agency and an online school of English. We share these businesses with my husband.
Okay. And was there a point where you would say you started to develop a kind of consciousness of politics, an awareness of politics, or is that something that's always been there for you, or kind of was there a kind of, I don't know, a moment for you that kind of sparked you into some kind of political consciousness?
Well, from childhood, I had these talks in my family. I told you about these Jewish roots, the attitude towards Soviet Union. Both of my parents voted for independent Ukraine, and they didn't favor Soviet Union at all. And they do not now, actually. So in 2014, when the war started, and what happened to Crimea was my personal drama. Like Crimea, it's just 6 hours by car from Dnipro. I used to spend my birthday in May in Crimea, mid-July campaign, and of course jazz festival in September in Koktebel. For me, it was a place. Even now, when I close my eyes, I see the route, how I drive from Dnipro. I remember every single turn. I spent many nice days there and nights. I had friends in Crimea, so and we discussed a lot the situation, because in Crimea the atmosphere and mentality was different comparing to Ukraine. I never heard anything about being a part of Russia, just to notice, but the students there, I mostly communicated with academic environment, and I took part in some conferences in Yalta. It was a favorite destination for most of the universities to conduct their conferences, and I heard some talks about being more independent, and that in Crimea they had there's some Kirimli, the Crimean Tatars, many other nations, so they deserve some special attitudes. And I also know that my friends in Crimea, they treated these Cossacks as some marginal groups. These Cossacks mostly were promoting the idea of Russification and being a part of Russia. But most of my friends didn't treat them seriously. Some crazy people. And like that, nothing more. So starting from 2014, I believe it wasn't an eye-opening experience, but I didn't expect that Russia would take advantage of the situation in Ukraine. I supported Maidan, I shared the values, and I was there not the whole time, but just for a weekend. And I was scared to death when they invaded Donbass. It was clear, it was so clear that, and when the oh, come on, it's so just, I have so many words to say, thoughts in my mind just to express it, but I thought that it was so we supported the army, donated, starting in 2014, and I always had a plan B, what to do if Russia occupies Dnipro, and what should I do and how would I behave. But it was mentioned that the first 2 days of the full invasion, I lost the ability to make decisions. I just stopped. I didn't expect that. I thought that I had a plan and I knew what to do, but I couldn't make any single decision. I was scrolling. I believe that kind of reaction, and that because of the anxiety I had, like that.
I mean, I was thinking about this when I was in Ukraine last weekend, about the way in which the English language is so saturated in metaphors which come from war. Because when you were saying this, the first 2 days where you felt paralyzed, the first word that I think of is shell shocked. and it's weird. It must come from the First World War, that idea of being shell shocked and the shells exploding near you, and the shock is so extreme that you freeze and that you kind of shut down. You can't act normally. And I use that expression all the time in English without thinking about the roots and the origins of where those expressions come from. And there's so many expressions like that come from military background and from the war. And yeah, I was just suddenly thinking of it as you were talking about that feeling of freezing. And quite a lot of people I know have told me the same thing, that in the early days of the war they just kind of shut down basically, and just couldn't function properly for a couple of days. I imagine that's a very
Yeah, and during these days, I also received some supportive messages from my so-called friends in Russia, because when we started our businesses with my husband, our first partners and our first contracts were from Moscow.
yeah
That was a quite successful business model. And there was a flight I took every single month, 7 a.m. Moscow, Dnipro.
yeah
I took it even more often than my train to Kyiv. And definitely, I did have some connections there. First 2 weeks, I received some messages from developers who worked for our projects, like, oh, we would never forgive him. Then I started to notice that most of these messages were about somebody. They didn't take responsibilities for this action,
yeah
you know? And,
Sounds very
and yeah, it was something that was happening with some people. They do not relate to this. When I deleted Russian keyboards from my laptop, I got a message from a Russian colleague. She asked me not to write with Ukrainian letters because she was afraid to be caught. Even though and she asked me to speak English or Russian. Since I don't want to speak Russian, we stopped our communication. But now I did not. Yeah, I think my last conversation was with a partner. Uh, she promised. Well, I think that was most of these narratives from Russia propaganda that Ukraine isn't a real country, that Ukrainians do not deserve to exist, that they didn't invade us, they protect the country, and blah, 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 all the things. I was so tired of hearing that, and we decided not to communicate anymore. It was
ask
about
you
a
if
year
you
ago.
still have anyone that sorry do you still have anyone that you're in touch with on the other side of the border?
Excuse me, can you repeat
Yeah.
that, please?
Do you still have anyone that you're in touch with on the other side of the border?
No, I don't, and I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't have any words. I mean, I used to have, and we like during the first couple of months, I even recorded some videos for our students in Russia explaining these things. My idea was they didn't understand. So when I watch this video, I feel so sorry, like, oh gosh, why I did that? That was my huge mistake. But I was, I made the same mistake as most of the Europeans and some of the Ukrainians are still making. I mean, I was looking for good Russians, and even if they exist, they do not take actions. They do not influence the whole situation. It doesn't change anything. So there are some people who do not support, but it doesn't help the situation. And we speak different languages. When I try to explain what I'm going through, this experience can't be compared to anything else because even, I mean, like even some Westerns and some Europeans, when I'm trying to express my feelings and emotions. I understand. I remember myself 10 years ago. It's hard to imagine because you don't have this experience.
Yeah. I think it's times like this where it's very, very difficult to verbalize and to make other people. I mean, for me, the nearest I came to understanding things is when I actually watched things like Mariupol Chronicles of Hell or 20 Days in Mariupol, and you watch
Oh,
these films. I mean, I just, if anyone out there hasn't watched them, watch them. But Jesus Christ, I mean, they're shattering things. They're shattering, and it's as near as you can understand for someone who's outside Ukraine what it was like in those places and what people lived through and what people died under. And I think those kind of films are much more. It's much easier to convey things through that kind of medium than it is through trying to explain to someone. And I think the other thing that happens, someone was telling me this last week in Lviv, there's often this thing where people can't really fully listen to you because they've already got their own predetermined judgments. So someone was telling me about being in the Netherlands for the first few months and trying to tell people about their experiences. And then in the end, this kind of West-splaining thing that happens. So, you know, Western guys would sit there and listen and say, yeah, that sounds really shit. But you understand that America caused this, you know, and it would like, which bit of what I've just said were you not listening to? And
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think in a way that's a kind of Western version of what you get from a lot of Russians, which is that kind of, yes, I heard you and it's terrible. However, you know, if you get rid of your government, then we can be fraternal people again and live happily together.
Yeah, and we can be brothers. Really? I would say that I would compare, I have one example to illustrate. Perhaps you know that now the story of Riza Tiza is getting hot. So I took advantage of this story and I compare Russia to toxic ex-boyfriend. Like imagine you've been together for 300 years. You didn't enjoy these relationships. You wanted to be independent. Then you finally got out of this relationship. Somehow you did this. So for 30 years you were independent. You lived your life. And then one day he comes, kills your, rapes, kills, steals, murders, and says that he is not guilty. That's our relationship with
And
Russians.
then why you don't love him anymore?
Yeah, yeah. Why? I was like this summer. I was in Bulgaria, and I had a nice conversation near the pool with a Bulgarian neighbor. Uh, Quite peaceful. He asked basically he asked me why Ukrainians don't want to join Russia. I already have the answer to this question because I lived in Bulgaria for 6 months. I usually answer that well, this situation might be similar to the one you have with Turkey. Why don't you want to be a part of Turkey? You used to be a part of Turkey, so that makes things clear. And usually Bulgarians do not have any questions. The illustration with Turkey for them is quite enough.
Yeah.
At this moment, a professor from Moscow University decided to approach us and educate me. So I again, all the repeated activity, all the repeated ideas from the Russian propaganda and Russian television. I was like, oh gosh. So I
It,
decided to send him to join Russian ship, and I got a message why I was being so rude. Really, I don't have any reasons for that.
it, it just incredible to me that you've had to leave your country because of the aggression of your neighbors, and then whilst you're in a country that you're seeking refuge in, you have to deal with people from the aggressor country who try to tell you that, you know, you should just accept your defeat gracefully and bow down to your natural lords and masters. I mean, and having been in Lviv last weekend, just the insanity of those opinions. I mean, the one thing I felt very, very, very strongly in Lviv is the absolute kind of defiance and resilience of the people, and the way in which you know, the idea that people will back down or surrender or roll over is just it's so insane, and you can feel it in every kind of street of the city. This feeling of defiance and resistance, and I don't know what else has to happen for people to understand that Ukrainians clearly don't want to be part of Russia. I just it just kind of blows my mind that people can't grasp this yet.
Um, well, I believe that when some of my European friends start to talk about peace and these ideas, I feel why well, everybody wants peace. I believe me, I'm highly motivated to have peace in my country, but first we should determine the term peace.
Yeah,
If we talk about absence of military action, for example,
yeah,
let's take the example of some territories they took over. Um, the conditions of life, they imprison people for speaking Ukrainian. These filtration camps,
yeah,
terrible things are going on there. I'm sorry, but that doesn't sound as peace for me.
yeah.
So that's why I do not treat the absence of military action what with Russia, and it's not peace. And why would you agree with and make some agreements with someone who literally breaks all the international laws? What the point?
And every treaty they've signed,
Yeah.
you know, every treaty they've signed, they've broken. And the idea that they'll this time they mean it, it's a kind of insanity. I think. I mean, it was a real shock for me here in the UK, coming from a kind of left wing background. I was a union member for years. You
Mm-hmm.
know, voted on the left. I've always been very opposed to the kind of Conservative Party here. It was a real shock for me to realise that lots of people that I'd seen, people on my side, were actually very deeply influenced by the Russian information space, and were also these kind of, I don't believe in violence. I'd like peace in Ukraine. I don't think we should be sending Ukrainians weapons. And for me, well, yeah, exactly what you've just said. That won't result in peace. That will result in Russian victory. And Russian victory will mean horrific hardship for anyone under Russian occupation. It will mean millions more people being displaced, and it will just postpone the point at which Russia then carries out further attacks. And I think, you know, you've seen this week, uh, I don't know if anyone out there watching doesn't know about it, but it's a kind of little tiny strip at the top of Moldova, which is still officially recognized as Moldova. It borders Ukraine, and it has a Russian-speaking population. And this week, the Russian, you know, gobshites have been basically saying the same thing about Transnistria as they said about Donbass 10 years ago, which is, you
Yeah.
know, the Moldovan regime is oppressing the Russian speakers of Transnistria, and we have to look after our people. And I think the idea that Russia is able to stop and not continue this is kind of delusional. I'm amazed that people still have this idea after 2014, because I think if 2014 showed anything, it's that idea doesn't work. That I let them just these things, and then they'll be quiet and happy. It's like it doesn't work, you
It,
know.
it doesn't work. They clearly send this message. They are not stopping. I believe they recently posted these billboards near the border with Finland, like Russia doesn't have any
Russia
borders.
have
They
people.
they they like, we are not going to stop. We are not afraid. They should be stopped. That's just the one way to have peace.
So can I ask a bit more, Maryna, about how all of this has affected your school and your teaching, and what happens in the classroom?
Well, I had to reinvent the whole business model. We switched from teaching Russian students to mostly Ukrainians and those who live in United States and Canada.
Yeah,
Um, well, as I told you, the half of my team had to leave the school, and that was hard because Well, first of all, these are people I used to work with. I invested time and resources into professional development, all these webinars and so on. Um, I had to translate everything from Russian into Ukrainian because the whole infrastructure was built for Ukrainians, Russian-speaking Ukrainians, as well as Russians. And honestly, I still haven't reached the level of income I had before the full invasion, unfortunately. But we're doing okay. We survived because there was a moment when I saw that we lost both of our businesses. My husband's business, which is a digital marketing agency, we mostly work now with American clients and Canadian ones. So, and going back to your question, teaching, um, well, I unsubscribed and I do not follow any ESL teachers on Instagram from Russia. I do not buy webinars from them and any materials. I do not support this. And what else? I think that I check the materials and resources I'm using. I mean, I don't want to use any Russian resources as well. And in some course books there are some text.
There's a lot of
Um, yeah,
Russia.
yeah, about Russia, Moscow, and people from Russia and Moscow. So we agreed in chat that we just skip this or we substitute with a different one because it's just like a trigger for Ukrainian students. Um, yeah, like that, I believe, mostly. So I also remember that during the first 2 or 3 months, we launched survival English course. It was for free for those who just moved, just to help and support some of our students who were elementary and they had to leave Ukraine and speak English.
Yeah.
And mostly now I'm focused on business English and English for digital marketers because that's what I do, and that's where I can be helpful. And I decided to switch a bit from general English and English for kids to business English. And now I help Ukrainian specialists to work with American clients and to feel more confident communicating with them like that.
Yeah, yeah. And as well as doing all of that, have any time to do any other kind of civil society stuff outside? You were saying earlier about donating and stuff, something that all the Ukrainians are involved in pretty much all the time.
I do my best to live my normal life. I go to gym. My son attends a daycare center. So apart from hiding in my bathroom and donating and having a separate budget for FPV drones, um, I think also I decided not to postpone different things. I wished for years to get my CE certificate in CELTA, so I did this year because when you live in Ukraine, it's better not to postpone things you want to get. And I was teaching my CELTA, I mean the observation lessons in my bathroom because of the it was the missile
Yeah,
attack. And but I managed, and it's great. I mean, like, no, that was mm, unbelievable experience, I would say. Getting CELTA certificate and teaching with some explosions nearby.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, very, very difficult. I mean, I was thinking about that thing you said about trying to do the things you'd wanted to do now. I mean, when I was in Lviv last week, I went down to the main square by the Opera House and I was just kind of watching all the groups of kids hanging around, thinking sometimes you'd see like 6 or 7 kids, and there'd be like the kind of emo kid, and there's a sort of weird gender neutral kid. And then there would be a couple of like 18, 19-year-olds in camouflage hanging out with them. And maybe they're about to go off and serve, or they're on a break from serving, and just kind of thinking about how do you live like growing up as a teenager? It's hard anywhere growing up as a teenager. How do you live knowing that your friends are going to go off and serve, that people you're going to have gone to high school with are going to end up dying for protecting your country? Maybe the guilt that you're not serving, maybe that, just all of the kind of emotions that you must go through in those situations, and how difficult it must be to kind of to live and live forward and live positively. And I mean, it was the other thing I felt in Lviv, as well as this kind of feeling of defiance and resistance. I felt very strongly this feeling of people who want to live, and people who are kind of full of this kind of, I don't know, feeling of freedom and life and energy, and feeling of understanding the cost of that, and understanding that it could be taken away from you, but needing to live anyway. And it was almost like a kind of intensified, kind of compressed feeling of living, which is very similar to what you're talking about there, which is just, you've got to get all of this done now because you don't know if you're going to be able to do it in the future.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And uh, here in Dnipro, most of the families, like since we are so close to the front line, in most of the family there is somebody who
Yeah.
serves, and I do have this feeling. I feel guilty that in my family somehow, uh, well, we managed for now, but I don't know what will happen like next week or next month.
Yeah.
Um, Fathers of my friends are serving. The brother of my best friend is there since 2014, and it's hard to find a family in Dnipro. Uh, and it feels it feels so close. It feels different. I mean, differently. And what anyway, today I was in the city center and I saw these beautiful cars. Dnipro is the city of fancy restaurants. It used to be a big industrial center, and
Yeah.
it still is. Lots of manufacturers there, but fancy restaurants, nice cars, luxurious shops, and I feel that life is still there. Um, I read a post of one a professor I used to work with, and her son is serving now, and for her it hurts to see even these people having fun and relaxing and having rest in some restaurants. I do understand her. I do feel that, but anyway, um, I also was that person who enjoys the life in the cafe and the restaurants. I understand that for me, it's just my way to cope with the whole situation, to grab a cup of coffee, or to walk somewhere with my dog and my son, and to unwind a bit, to feel normal, as if life is okay.
Funny, because I think people in the West kind of forget what happened in Western cities during the war as well. I mean, I know that my grandparents stayed in London during the Blitz, when the Germans bombed the hell out of us. And oh, people still went to bars and clubs and met socially, and would meet in people's back rooms and have a drink and play cards and talk, and then in the morning you'd wake up and the house over the road had been blown up. And people just carried on with their life, because that's part of resist. It's part of
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
in a way, when you recognize that what your enemy wants you to do is to kind of just give in and stop living, I think you have there's a kind of increased importance on you to live. Yeah.
And that's the idea I had in my mind when I was teaching these lessons on my Celta course, and like, Russians won't stop me from receiving my Celta certificate, and I kept doing it, even though it was like a year ago. It was a missile attack nearby, and 45 of my neighbors were killed. They were murdered. So every day I pass this house, this apartment building. I know that a coach of my son died there, some other neighbors, and it's just a sign. You were talking about resistance. Now they are rebuilding the house,
Yeah.
and for me, it's a sign that it's possible to not. I'm trying to find the right word here, to overcome. No, it's not about overcoming the situation, but it's the sign of resistance. Let's call it like that. So it's been just a year, but now the apartment building is getting it renovated, and it looks different now.
I always loved the thing in Warsaw where after the Second World War, we were basically flattened by both the Germans and the Soviets. One of the first things they did is to basically rebuild the old part of Warsaw exactly as it had been before the war. It's just like this kind of very, very stubborn kind of, you know, do you know what? Yes, you destroyed everything. We're going to rebuild it as it was. Fuck off. You know, it's a very powerful kind of human thing. I think that kind of desire to, yeah, to rebuild even in a time of destruction. And I know it's happening. I mean, I've seen the pictures from Bucha,
Oh,
where Bucha before and after, you know, basically within 2 years it's been rebuilt. And, you know, but part of me kind of thinks like it's insane to rebuild things during a time of war when it might get blown up again. It understands that, well, you have to have something people feeling they can live there, and you have to give people the feeling that their cities and their towns and their areas are livable. And I think it is also just that kind of, you know, yes, you can blow our buildings up, we'll rebuild them, thank you.
yeah, that's what we did with the shopping center. I think it was 2 months ago. They destroyed it, just like the part of it, but 2 days ago it reopened. And the citizens, they went to this shopping center. Shops are working, restaurants are working, and I enjoyed my cup of coffee there.
So can I finish with one question? And I realize it's a really difficult question, and I know that whenever I ask this to different Ukrainians, I get 300 different answers. How are you feeling the weeks and months to come?
um,
It's a difficult question.
it feels different. I mean, summers, springs. I know that um I know that every single day, as well as weekend months, this is, and we still, it, I'm trying to, sorry. So, I don't want to, I don't want to believe, like, uh, in February of 2022, my mom believed that um, 2 3 weeks and we could go back home.
Everybody,
Yeah,
yeah.
and because of that, I try not to count these days. I know it's been 2 years, um, but I'm not waiting for summer anymore, I would say. And I know that I won't go uh, somewhere. I won't go to Crimea or to Azov Sea with my son and with my family. I won't have barbecue with my friends because, we used to do it in my country house, and now it's not safe there because it's close to the airport.
Yeah.
Um, the same with my birthday. I have a birthday. My birthday is in May, and I used to go to Crimea, as I told you before. It's been 8 years. I celebrate my birthday somewhere, not in Crimea. So dates and the meaning of the dates, um, they changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for now, I don't have any long-term plans, just short-term. I'm doing renovation in my apartment. Can
Okay.
you imagine that during the war? and I'm searching for a school because my son goes to the elementary school, and that's like that's it. That's the plans I have for the next 6 months.
Yeah. Just take it by the days and by the weeks.
Yeah, I enjoy what I have, and I do not plan. No, I have some goals. My goal is to donate more, and that means I need to earn more.
Yeah. Pressure there then. And is there anything else you'd like to share with anyone watching, Maryna?
Well, thank you very much for giving this opportunity to speak out. And again, it was great to talk to you. I hope that your subscribers enjoyed our
I
conversation.
hope so.
So, thank you.
And I hope in Dnipro,
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
hope to see you in Dnipro after the victory.
Oh, that's so nice. I hope so too. Thank you very much. Have a great week.
Thank you, Maryna, and Slava Ukraini.
Heroям слава. Goodbye.
Thank you. And just to anyone else watching, just to finish off, if you are a Ukrainian teacher, or if you know someone who you think would be a good person to do one of these lives, please do get in touch. We're always looking for people to talk to, and we're hoping to keep amplifying Ukrainian voices once a month for the duration of the full-scale war. So thank you very much to everyone for watching.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll be doing one my own in a couple of weeks, just about teaching, by the way, because I feel like I've kind of let that side of things slip. So I saw a couple of questions earlier about how can I get my students to talk. I'm going to do one where we just talk about teaching and we don't have to talk about the war or anything like that. So keep your eyes peeled. I will be announcing it. And thank you very much, Maryna, for joining us. And
Thank you, Hugh. Yeah, see you. Goodbye.